I'm gonna hit record.
All right, let's sit this up just a little bit so I can have some height. Fake height.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Cool. So I just hit record and we're on. So I do this before I start talking, and I kind of gave you a heads up. But this is my friend Tiona for people who are just kind of coming into the interviews, and I like situating everyone in terms of kind of things that they can understand. So Tiona is an interdisciplinary research-based conceptual artist, filmmaker, sculptor, works with sound, curator, is the recipient of the Arts Matter Foundation grant, Keith Haring Fellowship in Art and Activism, Guggenheim Fellowship, and my favorite award that you got is the Bucksbaum Award from the Whitney Biennial. And that's an award that is awarded annually to one artist living and working in the United States whose work demonstrates a singular combination of talent and imagination. And I love your work. I find it so exciting and thrilling. And I also, so Tiona and I have known each other for about 4 or 5 months. We did a project that's coming out, I think, in like a week or so.
Yeah.
I'm stoked about.
That's wild.
And Tiona and I are also on the autism spectrum. We learned that about each other. And I reached out sometime last week and thought that might be a good idea to talk about what we're doing and our thoughts around this stuff and some of the challenges, but also some of the unusual ease we're having. And you were game, and I'm so like, I think that's really cool because I don't have a lot of other adults that I talk to about this stuff. So
absolutely, me too. Me either. I think I told you when we like met in person, I was like, I don't know any other adults. So yeah.
So I thought we could start with like how you were diagnosed, because I think we were both diagnosed as adults.
Yes. Yeah. I was diagnosed last January. Yeah, and it's a very strange kind of like path to it, because I think the first time or the inclination of it comes during my first ever therapy session, which I took in 2001. I still have like the therapy card for it, like the appointment card, where I was having such a hard time in college. And it's unusual because I was such an honor student and like, could do everything really well. But then in college, it was just like completely disorienting. And my teacher flagged the situation that happened like twice, where I just wasn't able to get through a test. But then he could ask me all the questions, and I was like, and he was like, you should go and, talk to someone and see if there's something going on. So I went to therapy. And the way they do it at college, you get like 3 sessions.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and through that session, at the end of it, they were like, "Have you are you aware of like the autism?" It's like autism at that point. I don't even know if spectrum was what was mentioned.
No, not back in 2001.
Yeah, it's like autism and then ADHD. And I was like, that didn't fit, like, because I'm not really jittery.
Yeah.
In a way, but then I was like, okay. So the thing that I rejected immediately was autism. I was like, that's not what this is, because I had also like these kind of like very severe, I guess like what now forms or ideas based on media. I was like, this can't be me.
Right.
But I did keep it inside of myself, and so from 2001 up until now, or up until last year, that was the only time that I like went back to get, formally diagnosed. And I went to Autism Center.
Yep.
Because I had a year of like 2018 was crazy for me art wise, and there was all this success, but I just felt like shit. I was just like, I don't know what's going on, and all these systems just fell apart. Like I was completely like uprooted from like the things that I really do to keep myself together. And I was like, I need to go and I need to check out about this, because at that point I had been following the conversation. I was like, this really may be a thing for me. And I went, and they diagnosed me relatively quickly. Yeah, they were like, yeah, this is the,
That's the same thing
you're
that
definitely on
happened
the
to
ASD. I
me.
got a whole stack of paperwork with a lot of diagrams and, weird stuff that I still work through to this day. But it was, I think by the time I got to be evaluated by the team, I was like kind of in a really bad space. So I was like almost nonverbal, not really talking, doing a lot of like repetitive, like
Yep.
stimming stuff. Yeah, completely, avoidant of eye contact at that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were like, this is what it is. But the thing that came out was like this idea of exceptional, like you're an exceptional case, which made me feel a little weird as well, because I mean, part of my commitment to trying to see about this also came with the understanding that I have 3 nephews that are on the spectrum, but I have one that is mute and more on the severe end. And so I was really interested in the relationship that I had from seeing him and some of the things that he did, or the things that I did as a kid.
Yep.
And so it was almost like a relief, because I was like, okay, we are the same. I mean, like, this is not coming out of out of nowhere. It made me kind of feel a little bit more capable
Yeah.
and grounded. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had a similar experience where it took the specialist like not long to diagnose me, which I was like, well, have you spoken to my friends? Because they're weird too, right?
Yeah.
And I got to take like, a preliminary diagnostic test that they give to everyone. Well, I snagged it and I gave it to my wife and I gave it to my friend. And where I scored like, 47 or whatever the number is,
Yeah.
for like 3 and like 5. So totally neurotypical. Whereas me, I'm like, all of this stuff that I've experienced as normal, or like very with the difficulty of imagining that other people are not experiencing it similarly. And I too felt like it was a relief, because it helped me understand, and this is like such a weird thing to say, but it helped me understand that, like, because my problem was like didn't understand why the world was behaving the way that the world was behaving, like that people were being the way that they were. And what my diagnosis helped me understand was like that they're being neurotypical and I am autistic, and therefore the way that I'm experiencing it is with like bigger neuron highways, and my brain architecture is different. And so I am actually experiencing the world and understanding the world in a way that neurotypicals are not. And one's not better than the other, but what it helped me realize was that, like, and for me it's funny to say, but that like nothing was wrong with neurotypicals, because I really walked around being like, what's wrong with everybody? Like, why are they behaving this way? Like, this is made me feel very unsafe, made me feel and I had kind of very early on super destructive coping mechanisms that I was able to let go of when I was in my early 20s. Drugs, alcohol, all of that was super helpful, because it just like numbed everything down. Like it just made me, like, it incapacitated me, which I now understand why I needed that. And I guess just to give people a word that they might not know, a word that you used, stimming. Stimming is something that people who are on the spectrum will do that I have a hard time understanding the word, because when I do it, it feels so natural. So it doesn't feel like a thing, but neurotypicals have given it the word to describe a repetitive movement that we might be doing, or something that we do I don't know that I use it as like, I don't know that it soothes me, other than it is just this thing that I do. Like, it's not, it's like not a, it feels more programmatic than like emotional for me. So, but the stimming, so you'll hear people, you know, like rocking can be one of them, or rubbing. My hands will fly out like that. That's something that I'll often do. But I only know that because it's been pointed out to me.
Same with mine are more in, like I like pull my
you
thumb.
Pull in?
Yeah, mine. Yeah. It's to the point where I like have pretty bad thumbs. It's just like where, and I used to like rub holes in my shirts.
Yeah.
Just like very like trying to hide like the energy almost, like
So it sounds like you and I both have a similar experience, that these symptoms have gotten somewhat better. You know, so people often ask me like, oh, how can you work in restaurants or at the Guild, where there are so many people that you're interacting with? And I've tried to explain to them that it's a really contained environment, that that it's the same thing that's happening over and over and over again. So it seems like there's a lot of stuff going on, but the same thing is happening. Like a table turn happens the same way. A welcoming of someone happens the same way. The architecture is the same. It's immovable. I'm in the same building every time. I show up every day. So there's a lot of like containment that happens. And I think that the problem, so it's interesting to talk to you about it, because I think that a lot of things that kind of like the presumptions that people have about what it means to be on the spectrum, and you and I are both, I think, what, I don't know that they call us high functioning anymore, but we both share the experience of being really, really good at things that were not very difficult for us. And so I think that becomes a little weird, because there's this exceptionalism that gets put on us.
But it's just like, the measure is like not, it's just, it's kind of a normal, it's a normal thing, in my head.
So I guess, you know, my question would be to kind of, to bring it to the current scenario. One of the things that we talked about was like that, you know, as a joke, it's like we've been social distancing for a long time.
Absolutely. As a part of care.
But I think a lot of our friends are having a hard time navigating that. And I thought maybe I don't know, maybe we could talk about like the comfort that we find in it that might be able to help them see it in a different way.
I mean, like there's you know, this whole experience, and especially when you talk to me about talking about this, I immediately flagged like a couple of moments like in my life where that led me, I think, up until this point of understanding that this idea or practice of distance, or social distancing, as it's been termed, which is so interesting, has been like a part of, like, forced upon me, or has been something that I've like chosen to do because of the results that it renders and how I can like be in the world at my best, right? And so I was thinking about, like growing up, I grew up in the South. I grew up really poor in South Carolina. And there's, this situation that would happen sometimes in this, when you're outside of school in the summer, where you're kind of stagnant if you don't have money, right? Like in these like semi-rural, not close to urban areas. And so that stillness is something that, can be sometimes suffocating to others, I think, if they know better. But that's something that, I remember a lot about, like having to be still and having to like really be accountable to the fact that there was a world, or aware of a world that's moving outside of me. And then, again, getting older and understanding what it meant to kind of be stuck, like, to be stuck. Like, I think I, like you, tried to be social in these ways. And in certain places, like, people knew me to be good at it, you know, but those were the times when I like used to smoke a ton of weed, and, you know,
Yeah.
and I don't even like weed. This was
Yeah,
so
right.
I used to like get high, and I hated it but it made me feel like I could be in spaces with people.
Yeah.
Um, and so like, you know, and it even now what made me forcibly have to realize what or how social distancing or this aloneness uh uh how it can like cause for a great space of like self-reflection is that, you know, when I was initiated within my practice of you know, Santeria, I had a year and 7 days of this like sequestered self, you know, very me alone, dressed in all white, have to be in by sundown, very much in yourself, like, you know, for this like certain kind of spiritual care and awareness. And it allowed and also increased a certain kind of sensitivity, because I've dealt with hypersensitivity
Yep.
throughout my life, but it also let me figure out how to settle it in a way, which I'm very thankful for, which then let me know that this was a healing tool that could work for me. From that point onward in my life, I practiced a certain way of being present, but also taking time. So like for the average, I even have a formula for it. If I have to go and do a panel or a lecture, I have to have 2 to 3 days to recover, you know?
Totally.
Yeah, like if I'm, on able to go to opening, I definitely need 48 hours of like maybe not talking. You
Yep.
know, if I have to talk, because also I have had episodes of non-verbal where it's just like it's like it's not a not want to talk. It is a hard, like I can't talk.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and it's like it's very hard to hide when you're around people, because it
Yeah.
makes you, it's almost like your words don't come out right. And so this is something I practice. Is why I live in Philadelphia. I live in North Philly. I'm able to be a citizen. I'm anonymous here. People don't know
Right.
who I am in this way of like, the way of industry or
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's benefited me greatly, and it's something that I've like stuck to. So when this occurred, I'm already kind of used to it, because this is what I do when I come off of trips, when I come off of certain things, especially in preparation for openings. I had a opening, quote unquote, that was supposed to occur, that would occur on like Monday or April 1st, right? So I was already setting myself up to kind of like
Be ready.
chill, to be ready to show up for one night, like you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so, I mean, I think right now, like the thing that I've had the conversation with the most, or offered up, even on my Instagram post that I shared, was like, this is very much making me think about this moment. One thing that happened when I came out of my year, of being initiated into a priestess, I was like, the one thing, I don't care if anybody, wanted to think about belief or spirituality, it would be beneficial for everyone to spend a year
Yeah.
where they had to like just kind of be in home and kind of practice a certain kind of awareness around their body. Because with that year also came no touch,
Right.
very minimal touch, a certain kind of interactions that were just really, cut out. And I took it as a tool of understanding how I gauge my energy, and also understanding that where my limits lie. So getting back to that point of 2018, what disrupted me is I had to like rent a room in New York for 3 months to get through 3 back-to-back exhibitions.
Yeah.
And I was only able to come home like 1 day a week. And that's when everything went haywire. Because New York doesn't really have the refuge.
That would be too hard for me.
Yeah, it's what when you do well in this field,
Yep.
you have openings 2, 3 a month, right? And you
Yep.
don't have to show up, and this is what I'm having to consider, like, now moving forward, if and when things open back up, is that I've and people who know me, they know I've cut back. I don't show up. I have like a thing now where I'm not doing any panels anymore, like,
Right.
because I understand them to be extraordinarily like disorienting, and the system of them don't work for me. Minimal lectures after doing those things, it just doesn't work. It doesn't matter the money or whatever, it doesn't work for me. So in this moment right now, I think the thing that I've been trying to impress on, you know, peers, close friends of mine first, and that I share with folks is that, you know, it's going to take you, besides being told, don't take it as you being told what to do. If you turn it around and say, this is what I'm doing for myself and for my care and for my wellness, then it makes it something different. I think that a lot of my folks, and I'm going to be very frank here, the people I'm having the biggest issue with in terms of behavioral stuff are in New York, where this is a very heavy-handed city. It moves you in a certain way, whether it's the subway. People don't see that. I see it whenever I go. It's like having a very big, like a big parent. Like it's a city that runs in a certain way. When that parent doesn't work, you don't work, right? And, you know, I think that the productivity model, and I'm saying this as someone who flags as very productive, but it feels very normal for me to do these things. It's almost like, you know, air. But like that hyper productivity, you only get so many times to say, what can I actually take? You don't even know how much pain you've been in, you know, moving through these careers or moving through these kind of like scenes. And I think this is a good time to take a measure or temperature of what these things have been doing to you for a while, you know?
Right. Well, but with that comes kind of like this obligation to be able to tolerate the fact that perhaps it hasn't been great.
Yep.
And
that's what I do relate to that. I understand that fear.
You know, that like, oh, you've been doing this thing all along, and now suddenly you're, in this instance, being told that you can't because the system has stopped, right?
Yep.
I mean, I think that a lot of the struggle from what I'm seeing is kind of like, well, there are a couple patterns that have come up. One is people have realized that they don't need to be working as much as they're working. Like that's been great. And I agree with that because there is so much time. Like when I am out in the world, I feel like I'm wasting a lot of my time. Like I don't need to be out here all the time. Like it's not, it keeps me from doing the work that I'm uniquely qualified to do. And it's like just this kind of, it looks and feels like this. And I think people's tolerance for like the flutter around them during a work day, now suddenly that flutter has been taken away and their work has been distilled. And I think that where you and I have an ability innate to kind of to not be focused is actually really uncomfortable for me. Anytime there's some sort of interference in that is when but my ability to kind of like laser focus on something and get it done. I love your idea of like flagging as productive. That's funny because it's like a flag that is based on a value system that is not, that's not mine. Like these are the things that I'm doing, right? But I think that you used a word that I really like is like this idea of aloneness. And I don't know about you, but for me, when I was growing up, I was definitely like the weirdo. So, I mean, I was a really fast swimmer and I was an Olympian and I was, you know, excellent at school, which both felt, you know, the Olympics felt irrelevant and also kind of like, why are we excited about people going back and forth in a pool? I did not understand the concept. But school was very easy for me, and I didn't understand why there was a value system based on that, because I was just doing this thing that was structured, and I found comfort in different things other than excelling. But I wonder, so I was accepted to a certain degree. Yeah. But I felt very apart from everybody because all of this stuff made sense to everyone else, not necessarily to me, even though, and this is something that they've said for, you know, young girls who are on the spectrum, we're able to see these patterns and then replicate the patterns.
Absolutely.
So absolutely. It makes us, I mean, we basically flag as and as normal, right?
Yep.
Maybe eccentric, but I always knew that the experience that my friends were having was very different from what I was having, because none of what they were experiencing made any sort of rational or emotional sense to me, their value systems, any of that. And so as a result, felt very alone. And
Yeah.
I've always, it's gotten better as I've gotten older. And it was interesting for me to read kind of statistics about folks who are on the spectrum and who are queer. There's like comorbidity there around depression and suicide. Like there are actually a lot of us who end up like not being able to tolerate that distance, because it's alone, like you are alone.
Yeah.
I think for some of us who've made it through those more difficult times, you know, and our brains have fully formed, now we can say that there's a lot of like I too feel rejuvenated by this time. I'm like, oh wow, everyone else is also finally like stopped.
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's like okay, that's literally what I was like, okay, stop. And then we're all gonna take these 2 weeks and we're gonna, you know, everybody's gonna get good and their system is gonna get good together, and then we're gonna come together and be back together. And it just when the stopping thing, you know, just you know, spiraled into the online thing or the, you know, all this other stuff, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is not what this moment is about, you know. But I understand it, you know, I like it, even in the frustration, I get it.
Right.
But it's not something that I have, I don't have that privilege to really get with that. Like this time on the other end could be a very, you know, scary time, you know, in the sense of like, really wanting to pull away from people, like for real, just because I'm like, okay, here's something that for once, like it helps, or forcibly in its horrificness, is putting you in a place to have a bit of eyes of like, you know, how literally a system of a virus works, that alone, right? And there's a resistance to behavior. It just is like devastating. The gravity of it, I feel bowled over by the ignorance behind it, or the disconnect and the continual behavior that puts other people's lives in danger. Just because there's so much of the way that I have been to try to hide, or to try to like be considerate of the ways that I could be to others, to the point of shrinking, to the point of smoking weed when I don't like weed. You know what I mean? Like doing these little bitty things, and then I'm like, okay, here's something that can affect all of us, and then there still is this rejection of like care. So I mean, I've had to do, you know, it's easy in the sense of like trying to get over it and just trying to be present, like, you know, pull out a little bit from online, check on a little bit to see how people are doing, but also be in this space. You know, I had to move into a new apartment, so I'm like obsessed with like trying to figure out
your space.
Yeah, my space.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I spend a lot of time in my space, and I have friends who I'm realizing, especially in New York, etc. They've never spent more than they never spend any time in their rooms unless they were sick, right? So they don't even like their spaces, you know. And this is like a moment that's making maybe them realize that. And so there's like, I think it's too early for some people who are still processing, some people who are not processing, to get it, but there is something to be said about understanding, or being preemptive, or, you know, proactive in facing aloneness, that doesn't put you at risk for you know, being selfish. One, I think that's a lot, and I'm gonna put that out there because I know as a Black woman that comes up, because you are seen oftentimes as someone who's supposed to carry so much. What does it mean to take time for yourself and pull out of this system that is not, you know, very forgiving for your needs, you know? And that's something I've had to battle. And that's been, of course, something that has led to, you know, insecurity that I had in the past around even being on the spectrum, around this fact that I would be immediately deemed incapable, having had done, you know, et cetera, you know? So I get it from multiple levels, but I just, you know, again, I think I hope for moments of reflection, You know what I mean? Where people can understand that, you know, even the idea of social distancing is, in some cases, for some people, a privilege. There's some people who can't social distance because of circumstances that just will not allow it.
Right.
Like, you know, so the term still has to be figured out, I think.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think it's the right term.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a weird, the incorrect. That's not what
it's to do. It's like social distance. When the word came out, I was like, oh, this is so interesting, but it's also going to confuse people because it makes them, because it makes them think that they still need to be social in physical space at all.
Yeah.
Like you don't, you know, for some folks, when I say these things, I'm talking about the people who go to bars and the people who think that they need to be gathering for barbecues or in the street with each other. You know, I just don't, I think that there has to be a different kind of like value around what
one
it
of
is.
the things that you and I were talking about, so I guess I just want to go back. Do you feel like there's been, because I too can identify for different reasons around this anxiety of like what it means to be a woman and what it means to care and what it means to be soft in my case. Like,
yep.
And because I'm on the spectrum, I often am not. Like, I am known more for kind of like directness, or
yep.
I'm also really tall, so I take up that space. And I feel like for me, I have to check myself because a lot of that, I've been allowed a lot of it because I'm more masculine.
Yep.
And do you feel like that's the case for you too?
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, I'm so aware of masculinity in that way. Like, yeah. I'm like 5'8", and there's times where I've gone in rooms and you couldn't tell me I wasn't 10 feet. Yep. And it all has to do with this like kind of like presentation. And so that awareness, I also don't speak in upward inflections. I tell people all the time, it's like, it's just I speak with periods. Yep. So there's like that disconnect. I'm very direct, you know, on top of that. And those things, unfortunately, get lumped into ideas around power, masculinity, etc., which is why I've like been very adamant that people like, you know, see me as a woman and yep. address me as that, and do not think that this is something that is part of my investment at all. But I know, like, you know, early on in the film industry, when I was working there, the trajectory that I was on, and this is on crew stuff, like this is before I got to even make my own stuff, the navigation was made easier because I was that way. Yep. I was able to get into higher in positions because I was, you know, read as this kind of like person that was just very straight this way. But it's just like, also like, it's just how I am. I don't know how to do that. I do that work in, you know, relationships, you know, the softness, how to be soft. And have had to like push back against the ways of like, you know, thinking about what, you know, it's like my natural disposition as a kid. It's not something that is tied to these clothing and things like that. It's just really sometimes like an aesthetic simplicity there. I mean, because I come from like you know, Southern Belle women. Like I'm come from that kind of thing. So I'm very also, on the other thing, what felt better to me was chivalry. So I was like, it felt better as this odd little thing to be this way for people who are afraid. Like, I'm not afraid of a lot of weird, you know, like not even weird. I tell people I have an irrational non-fear of things that I probably should be afraid of. I'm not afraid of men.
Right.
Like, you know, like I fought men more in my life than I have any woman. Like, you know, and like argue with men more than any woman. So it's like, when you get into that position, you see that you're kind of like configured a little wrong, or, you know, different in that way. You just move that way, and just so happens that some of these things also get tied up in like ideas of masculinity.
Yeah.
And so, it is something that I try to be mindful, because I'm also aware that there are people who are not, you know, wired up in that way, and I don't want them to be offended and think that this has something to do with them, when it's just so much about like what is sometimes it confuses me. Like, I am very late to like for example, sometimes real late to like certain, you know, I've been in space where I'm like, I get confused. I'm like, the person will, like put down a check and put it towards you. So what's going on here? Like, or just little, things like that. I'm still late to a lot of like moments where I'm just like, this is kind of the care, or this is the kind of way that I feel it's so natural that it's now flagging as this weird thing. And I'm like, ugh. So yeah, it is. It's like, it's brought a lot of funny moments, like in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
And so my other question, the thing that we talked about as well, was just kind of one of the experiences that I've been having. And then maybe this could be like the last thing that we talk about, because I bet you and I are actually both kind of tired. So yeah. I'm okay with that. Yeah. But one of the things that I originally found deeply upsetting was, I guess, the media's inability to be able to see. So I'm French, my wife's Australian, and so we have the privilege of being able to see multiple media sources, but also in Australia, we're really close to Asia. So 2 months ago, we knew what was happening in China. And for me, I think, and I've learned that it's a symptom of symptom isn't really, it's a trait of my autism, this kind of like inflated sense of justice. And when I see things that aren't just at a cost of humans, and it's kind of like this other kind of like caricature of people on the spectrum as like not caring about other people. It's not true. We actually deeply care, and once we become attached to like individuals, we're like super attached. But for me, I actually really become this hypersensitivity to suffering is the thing. And what's been hard for me has been kind of like this slow or behind or latent response to what I'm seeing as just a very systematic pattern that has consistently happened in all of the countries that coronavirus has hit. And I don't understand why federally, but at some state levels, people aren't responding given the pattern of this information that has happened. And I think that things are changing from 2 weeks ago, but 2 weeks ago, or even a week ago, I was just so in such disbelief that my friends and the people I knew were not behaving according to the very clear things that will help healthy people stay healthy and keep sensitive, fragile people from getting sick. And those things are very easy. And I keep doing this because they seem they're all connected, right? If you do this, then this connects to that, then the well-being of this connects to that, then the well-being of that. And it's like this really comfortable chain. And I think sometimes I don't understand the inability to work collectively or collaboratively based on a system. And I guess maybe my question to you is, it's like, and it's gotten better, like I've done my meditation and I do all of the things that kind of like calm me down. I eat really good food. I have the ability to bake because I know how to bake. So I'm baking, and I know that sugar helps a little bit, chocolate helps a little bit, kind of like reorganize that stuff. But, I don't know, what are the things that you've done? Because I find when things like this happen, I have to take even more care of myself, right? So for me, that means exercising, that means eating well, that means sleeping well, that means being connected to my wife because she's like my biggest motivator. And all of those things help me land a little bit more. What are those things for you?
I immediately I put on my all whites. I'm gonna just keep it like on a basic aesthetic thing. Sometimes
I wear all my button ups.
Listen, like I have a lot, it's just like I had started, just like naturally moving into wearing all white, putting myself back into a space where it's like, this is it's almost like this is an inherent thing to be mindful. You know, one of the things that happened just spatially, when you wear all white, you move different. When I wore all white, I was very mindful that this could get dirty. You know what I mean? So it's just like that basic awareness of body.
Consciousness to the
Yeah, it's
movement.
just, yeah, like just in the sense that whatever way that I didn't trust myself, I could be more mindful. You know, I have you know, I completed over the course of a week a move. So it was really a time for me to go through my things. I got rid of a lot of stuff. So I like when I get uh, upset or get flustered, I clean or like I organize. Like I'm organized, like a lot of like weird, weird stuff. So I have a lot of books, and I'm like working through like thoroughly organizing them in a way that's like beyond belief. And so
How do you organize your book? Like, by what system is it?
Oh my gosh. The first thing that I'll say.
Genre?
So I have two parts. Yeah, genre. I do a fiction, nonfiction thing, and I have a big thing about author groupings. Like the first thing I did was I put all my Toni Morrison like first editions up in their own section. You know, like stuff like that, because I do collect. I collect first editions, and I have a lot of monographs and things like that. But I'm trying to figure out, and I'm sitting still in the midst of it, but setting up the things how in the ways that I read information while I'm doing projects. Like it's like a book stack that informs work. And because I'm going to start doing editing is soothing. It's weird to be in to be able to have so much time to edit, because I actually put myself on a 5-hour workday.
Yeah.
Like just so I could like kind of free up my mind to like read and all this other stuff. So I'm about to go back into editing, which is like. Do you think
editing soothing because it has like a direct action result?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an action result, and it's something that is offline and online.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like like when I'm editing something, I'm editing while I'm walking around. And then I have the moment to like enact it. So there's something that's very like physical about it for me, like even the exporting and see it.
Totally.
You know, so that's there. Music, jazz, getting away from music with words. This is something that I do when there's a little too much going on. I don't listen to a lot of music with language or, you know, words. I listen to instrumental.
So so I do the same thing. And is that because you can't help but listen to the words?
Yeah, it's just like they can start to fill up my head and inform like the pictures. Yeah, like it cuts through something that I just need to you know, stay a little different. It's been, you know, I've been struggling a little bit with the natural waking up, but I also understand that I'm tired. Like I usually wake up between 6:30 and 7:30 naturally. So I've been going later, like 9 and 10. I've just realized I've been tired because I was again gearing up for this big moment to occur on April that would put me physically around a lot of people, and also the work has to do with the body and stuff. The work has me dancing in it, you know, like it's just like a different kind of like work, and I can still feel the time, and that's how sensitive I can still feel that my body was moving towards that, and so something has allowed me to like kind of like relax in that way. So sleeping in, laying and like kind of looking at the ceiling, like, you know, just, you know, taking it easy. But I mean, I have tons of weird things. I have things around sense of smell, like, you know, like tea tree oil. It's like something that is like big for me. Keeping my hair cut. My girlfriend, the first woman.
Did she cut your hair?
She helped me cut my hair yesterday because I just had. I had to have it. It was getting crazy, you know, like those things are things that I do because it helps me feel together. I also like to feel together. Yeah. So I've just been trying to, in my own way, within my own opportunity to be able to do that. I also take very brief like walks, you know, in the area that I'm in, it's not a lot. There's a lot of abandoned lots and things like that. So walking around and looking at stuff, but being quiet, because if I'm not, the stress that you're talking about, I've also flagged it because most of the people, like most of the things I follow on Instagram are news cycles.
Yeah.
They're not like people. And that kind of distress hit me so hard because most of my friends here are elders, right?
Yeah.
You know, I have an elder right now who's in hospice care. His wife is older and not in the best shape. So I'm very, very afraid. And, you know, even on my email automated note, I put something in about like, everybody needs to get into contact with an elder because they're not even online, like to
No.
get this direct, you know, to know where the news is. So that's something that's like, you know, I think been more dominant in my mind around really the helpless, like people who just don't, who will definitely be affected by our failure if we don't, you know, get this shit together.
Yep.
So
Yeah. I feel like this is a nice
yeah,
place to end. I'm
yeah,
so grateful for your time, dude. Thank you so
thanks.
much. I'm gonna stop recording and then we can say a proper goodbye.